ang mag-audit sa lahat ng gobyerno. Lahat. Pati yung akin. Huwag umpisa ako sa akin. But just tell me. I have been really trying to figure out in this democratic setup. Sinong u-audit ng COA? That is my question.
PDP Laban insists they're still pushing for the Goat Duterte tandem in next year's polls, despite speculations that Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte is the real standard bearer.
Delicadeza dictates that only one Duterte will run. So, since only one Duterte will run, and in his perception, the Mayor Sara will not run, then he can run for Vice President. But alam nyo, nothing is final, no, until October. And meanwhile, this is a family matter, no. So I would hope that the rest of the nation give the father and the daughter breathing space.
The President and his daughter may either team up or face off in the 2022 elections. But their political maneuverings have surfaced critical questions. Is the President laying the groundwork for him to stay in power or to perpetuate a political dynasty? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to this special edition of The Chiefs. I'm Robbie Alampay. Kasama po natin si Ed Lingao of One News and later on, nandito na pala. And with us also, aming pamintuan of the Philippine Star. Happy Friday.
Happy weekend. Tatlong araw na lang. Lunes na.
Ami, exciting ang natin pero quickly lang. Anong balita natin?
I'm very happy, of course. Second highest daily case na naman ngayon of natin. At sabi ng nurses, itutuloy nila yung kanilang mass action in September 1.
17,000 plus. And later on in the program, second half of the program, we'll be talking about COVID, the numbers, and so on. But for now, we'll talk about the other headline in this country, which is always politics. Diretso na po tayo. Medyo maganda tong guest natin yan. Joining us tonight, Hugpong ng Pagbabago, Secretary General Anthony del Rosario. Good evening, Mr. del Rosario.
Good evening.
Good evening po. Good evening po sa inyo lahat.
Hi, sir.
Maraming salamat po. Maraming salamat po sa panahon na binigay niyo sa akin.
Opo, sir, umpisa na natin kasi kanina nung binasa ko yung intro, sinabi the President and his daughter will either be in tandem or face off. I just realized hindi necessarily yun lang ang options. Ano po ba talaga ang plano? Are you here to announce anything for Hugpong ng Pagbabago and particularly for Mayor Sara Duterte?
Wala naman po, no. I think everybody already is aware because of numerous announcements coming from the mayor herself. She has already stated previously, and she still remains to be consistent with the fact that she will decide on October whether or not she will run for mayor of Davao or president of the Philippines, no. So hindi po nagbabago yun. That still remains to be the case. With regards po doon sa issue na pwede mag-square off yung dalawang ang amahan at yung anak, I don't see that happening, no. I think it is very clear already, again, from previous interviews from Mayor Sara, that that will not happen. It's either she will run for president and the president will no longer run for vice president, or she will seek re-election in Davao as mayor, and then possibly the president might run for vice president. Pero we do not see a situation where you will have a Duterte running in 2022. At hindi rin natin nakikita na magbabanggaan po ang grupo ng HNP at ang grupo ng PDP.
But in other words po, she agrees with the statement from Malacanang attributed to President Duterte also by spokesperson Harry Roque na Duterte, hindi pwede yan. Walang delikadesa yan. Hindi maganda tingnan yan. She agrees with that.
Well, as I said, sir, she has already said that numerous times. No, this is nothing new. She already mentioned this, I think, as early as June. No, when the possibility came out because of the surveys, where she was leading in the presidential race, and of course her father was leading in the vice presidential surveys. But again, tama po, no? I believe it is a matter of delicadeza, and that is why she has maintained that that will never happen where you will see a it will never happen where we will see a Duterte running in 2022.
What
Sir,
about the
that does sound that does sound a bit that does sound a bit I mean that does sound a bit final. Pero sir, I have to ask you, is that cast in stone? Kasi you know, as we have seen over the past few decades, madalas may mga nagbabago ng isip dahil sasabihin hiling ng taong bayan, o I've been asked by my supporters, I cannot let them down. So I go back to that. Is that, do you think, cast in stone, or is that malleable like clay?
I do not want to second guess the mayor, no, because number one, I believe in her sincerity. I've worked with her for several years, and if there's one thing I can tell you about Mayor Sara, yes, it really takes time for her to make a decision. That's really consistent with her, no. She really takes long to make a decision, which is very different from her father. Number two po, once she makes a decision, yun talaga ang mangyayari, no? And that is why I've never seen in recent years Mayor Sara flip-flopping on decisions. No? Talagang pinag-aaralan, at kung desidido siyang gawin yung gusto niyang gawin, gagawin niya at tuloy-tuloy na yun. It's very rare that we will see a reversal of her decision.
What about the other scenario na sinabi ni Mayor Sara na prinisinta sa kanya ni Presidente Duterte na tumakbo siyang presidente at vice president niya si Senator Bongo. Is that still a possibility at this point?
I do not think that's going to happen also, ma'am, no? Where you will see a Sara Duterte-Bongo tandem. From the point of view kasi po ng HNP and of course Mayor Sara, it does not really make political sense to have a tandem coming from the same area, no? More so coming from the same city, Davao City. No? This is a national, the presidential campaign is a national campaign. So it really doesn't make sense. You're from Mindanao, you're from Davao City, tapos ang vice president mo is also from the same area. I've never seen that in the history of Philippine politics po. And rightly so, because it doesn't make political sense. No? We all know in recent surveys that Mayor Sara leads in Mindanao among all the presidentials listed in the surveys. If I'm not mistaken, parang nangunguna din yata siya sa Visayas. And nakikita natin po sa Luzon, it's parang number 3 po yata siya sa Luzon, if I'm not mistaken. So it only follows that she would probably get somebody from Luzon, no? In order to strengthen her numbers nationally.
But
That makes political sense.
yeah,
no?
but staying on political sense, Mr. del Rosario, I'm just curious, does it make political sense to have two presidential candidates from Davao, both of whom are allied with President Duterte?
Hindi po, I don't think it's also going to happen where you're going to see Mayor Sara running against Senator Bongo. No? I don't think that's going to happen also. Again, I think both of them have mutual respect for each other. Senator Bongo has been a loyal aide. He started out as a loyal aide to the president and is now a senator of this country. And he maintains to be very close to the president and to the family also, no? Not only to the president, but of course to the children. And I just do not see the prospects of a Bongo versus Sara Duterte in 2022.
So you believe both sides here are pragmatic enough to not do that. But then that leads us to the other scenario naman that everybody's speculating on na actually doon naman talaga papunta to. Si Sara Duterte naman talaga yung kandidato even ng PDP laban. At sabi nila, moro-moro, Sarsuela lang daw to. I mean, your comment on that, sir?
Well, going back to the previous question, the previous issue, even Senator Bongo himself has already come out with video messages. No, I think we've seen at least 2 or 3 yata in recent days, where he is saying that hindi siya interesado mag-presidente, ihuli na lang siya, mga ganong statements, no? So that to me is a sign na talagang, at saka nabanggit din niya na nag-uusap na sila ni Mayor Sara, no? That's very clear. So the communication is there, no? So I do not see a scenario talaga na parehong tatakbo for president, no? Now going back po dun sa question ninyo, pakiulit nga ulit yung question mo ninyo.
Kaya dami nagsispekulate even sa political analysts are saying actually smokescreen lang yang si Bongo, si Sara Duterte talaga ang kandidato ng lahat.
Well, I will not anymore make a comment with regards to that, sir, no, because I don't think what I say tonight will change what they're thinking. Pabayaan na natin po sila mag-isip ng gano'n. But as far as hope po is ng pagbabago is concerned, isa lang po ang kandidato namin at si Mayor Sara po yun, for president. But we still have to wait for her to make that decision. So I think that's how it goes as far as HNP is concerned po, no?
Sir, what should we make of all the pilgrimages made by so many politicians to Davao City to meet with the Mayor Sara? For example, yung pagpunta ni Gibo Chodoro, I think a month or 2 ago. Also yung pagpunta ni BBM, I think that was last month. In both cases, their supporters, I'm talking about the supporters of BBM and Gibo, were saying na tatakbo na si Sara at ito yung VP. Of course, nagkakaiba sila ng kwento. Kanya-kanyang palo yan eh. Pero, clearly, you have politicians making a beeline to Davao City to trumpet the idea that Mayor Sara is running and that they are part of the tandem. I'm sure that that Mayor Sara is aware of this, and is she disabusing the public of that idea, or wala? It's just a hands-off thing.
Alam mo po, hindi po pwedeng ipigil po ni Mayor Sara kung mayroong gustong pumunta sa Davao City para makipagkita sa kanya, no? And marami, well, actually, to be fair, to be honest also, marami na rin ibang mga tao na gustong, especially politicians, na gustong courtesy call, makipag-usap kay Mayor Sara. But there are times where she already declines, no? Because nga, alam naman niya kung anong pag-uusapan niya, which is the 2022 elections. And, there have been times where Mayor Sara and I have spoken privately, and sinasabi niya, can we stop talking about the 2022 because I need to focus on Davao City, the problems with the pandemic, and let's just wait in October until I make my decision. Now, with regards to po sila former Secretary Gibo or former Senator Bongbong going to Davao, obviously it's very clear that they support Mayor Sara's possibility of running for president. If the mayor runs for president, surely Secretary Gibo and Senator Bongbong will most likely support Mayor Sara. No? But again, at the end of the day, Mayor Sara still has to make up her mind. She does not, there's one thing with Mayor Sara, she does not allow other people to dictate upon her with regards to what she plans to do. She's grateful that there are people who want her to run. She's grateful that there are people who are very supportive of her. But at the end of the day, she will make her own decision, and she will make that announcement in due time.
Pero pwede ba nating sabihin na because it's significant, marami na kami naririnig ng mga politicians who are saying pwede kaming maging katandem ni Mayor Sara. But she has met only with the former Defense Chief Gibo and si former Senator Marcos nga. So, pwede ba namin sabihin na she is open to these two gentlemen? Na maging...
Well, actually, ma'am, pwede natin sabihin na she's open to anybody, to be honest. No? Again, this is... kami po sa HNP, we're following a process, no? And we do not want to shortcut the process. And right now, number one in that process is really to wait for Mayor Sara to make a decision. And then everything else will follow. Yun ang step 1 po natin. No? Hindi tayo pwedeng pag-usapan yung step 2, which is the Vice President, kung hindi pa natatapos yung step 1. We do not want to put the cart before the horse, so to speak. No? So, ang sa amin po dito sa HNP, we're just patiently waiting kung ano po magiging decision ni ma'am. And once she decides that she will run for president, for example, in October, then that is when we will move on to step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, and all the steps down the line, no, leading to the elections. But before that, it's pointless to discuss anything else because the number one step has not yet been completed.
Mr. Del Rosario, remind everyone, Mr. Del Rosario is Secretary General of Hugpong ng Pagbabago, and I know we're sort of pushing the boundaries here of you speaking for Hugpong, but also speaking for Mayor Sara Duterte. But I'll go out on a limb here and ask you about how she processes and how she looks at things. Nabanggit niyo po na yung delikadesa, obviously, napakahalaga, lalong-lalo na sa usapin ng Duterte, hindi maganda tingnan. And both of them have invoked out of delikadesa, hindi pwede yan. Yung po bang concern niya and yung level ng sense of delikadesa niya, does it end there on the proposition of a Duterte? Or does she think, does she have delikadesa concerns also about her father running for vice president?
Well, kasama po lahat yan, ano? Including her father running for vice president. If she runs for president. Now,
No, but if she doesn't, I want to isolate that point.
Yes,
Does
okay.
she believe
Okay.
that it's proper for President Duterte to run for vice president, given all of these questions and criticisms about, you might be running afoul of the spirit of the Constitution?
Well, actually, sir, we have not really discussed that yet, no, with regards to the scenario wherein she will not run and then her father decides to run. I have not really asked her what her thoughts are about, her personal thoughts are with regards to her father running for the vice presidency. I do know earlier this year, she sort of mentioned to me na sana magpahinga na si PRRD. Medyo tumatanda na po ang tatay niya, gusto sana na magpahinga na. Pero with this new development now that the president has said that he will run for vice president, hindi po namin napag-usapan kung ano po nasa pag-iisip ni Mayor Sara with regards to that decision. But at the end of the day, being that the president is the father of Mayor Sara, surely if the president really insists that he will run for vice president, then surely I would imagine that being the daughter, Mayor Sara would support her father's decision to run.
May isa pang potential out of the question scenario na gusto naming klaruhin. Pwede bang mag-align ang Hugpong with PDP laban?
Actually, ma'am, anything is possible, no? Wala naman kaming pinagbabawal na partido na gustong sumama sa amin, no? But as of the moment, wala pa ho kaming natatanggap na feelers na gustong pong makipag-alyansa ang PDP with HNP. So until that happens, there's really nothing to discuss, no? Pag meron tayong natanggap na feelers galing sa PDP, then probably that's the time for us to meet and discuss sa HNP po kung anong mga moves natin going forward.
Yeah, and we're sure po, totoo naman sa Philippine politics talagang nagugulat na lang yung mga tao, wala talagang imposible, no? But nonetheless, there might be anything to discuss right now, but there are some things that we hope you could expound on. For example, her thoughts on the PDP laban. In the statement that came out, tinawag niyang sitcom ang PDP laban. And you read into that and parang, perception ko is may suya yun, may suklam. What are her thoughts on the PDP laban? Because those are pretty strong, sharp words.
The statement, I believe, that Mayor Sara came out with, I think 2 or 3 days ago, I think if you really read the statement well enough, actually, I read it like 2 or 3 times. I think what's very clear there in that statement is she doesn't want anybody dictating or telling her what to do. That's very clear, no? Now, with regards po doon sa PDP, I don't think naman po na galit siya sa PDP. As a matter of fact, she only mentioned 2 personalities in PDP na in the last paragraph of her statement, no? So I think yun yung dalawang tao doon sa loob na hindi niya kursunada because nga, again, ginagamit po ang kanyang pangalan. And that's why she was saying na hindi niya maintindihan, bakit niya ginagamit ang pangalan ko na hindi naman ako kasama dyan sa grupo ninyo. And I think that's the gist of the statement that she came out with several days ago.
Kung tatakbo po siya, ano kaya ang magiging platform ni Mayor Sara if she decides to run for president? Ano kaya ang mga priorities niya? How will she sell herself to the voters?
Again, ma'am, that's already further down the line. No? I think that's going to be mga step 4 or step 5 in the process po. No? It's too premature for us to talk about anything else with regards to platform, her plans on how to campaign, what are the strategies. It's too premature simply because we still have not heard her decision with regards to 2022.
Sir, could you give us an idea lang of the relationship between Sara Duterte and Senator Bongo? Sinabi niyo nga, parang she did say, look, I have nothing against him. But, you know, in the years you've known her, I mean, have they worked together? And what's the working relationship, if any? Because iba yung, I have nothing against him. Iba yung, todo suporta ako dyan dahil kilala ko yan at, you know, I like how he works. I mean, could you give us a better idea of the dynamics in the working relationship between Mayor Sara and Senator Bongo?
Well, actually, sir, unfortunately, I cannot really give you an assessment of the working relationship of the two personalities that you mentioned. No? Simply because ever since I first met Senator Bongo, that was around 2004, 2003, nandun na po siya kay Presidente Duterte when he was mayor of Davao City. No? So I've never had the chance to see Senator Bongo work with Mayor Sara in person. Ang parati kong nakikita since 2003 when I first met him was ang working relationship ni Senator Bongo with Mayor Digong Duterte. No? As far as Mayor Sara and Senator Bongo is concerned, the only time I've actually seen them together, working together, was during the 2019 campaign when HNP was campaigning for the senators in our slate, which included Senator Bongo. No? Doon ko lang actually sila nakita nagsasama, and there was really nothing wrong with the working relationship then, no? And that's why I really don't believe that there's a problem with regards to the relationship with Mayor Sara and Senator Bongo.
Would you know kung ano po ang thoughts ni Mayor Sara about Senator Manny Pacquiao and Senator Coco Pimentel? Kasi malapit din sila, Senator Coco, sa mga Duterte.
If you don't mind, ma'am, I would like to no comment na lang muna ako with regards to that. No? Kasi I really have not spoken to Mayor Sara about her thoughts with regards to those two people.
Sir, sige po, go ahead.
Ishe, ikaw na.
Well, sabi nga po ninyo, si Mayor Inday will announce her decision, any decision, in October pa. In the meantime, PDP Laban will have its convention on September 8. So in other words, mauna po yung PDP Laban. In which case, kung matuloy ang plano ng PDP Laban, and this has been their publicly stated plan, they will push for Bongo and Rodrigo Duterte tandem. Given the fact that sabi nga ninyo, hindi naman gusto ni Mayor Sara na magkaroon ng Duterte at Duterte na magkasabay, na tatakbo, at ayaw niyang makabangga si Bongo. Will any decision by the PDP Laban to push the Go Duterte tandem in September 8, will that affect, or how will that affect her decision come October? Will that preclude her or prevent her from running? I mean, how big an impact will that have on her October decision?
Well, if we, it's very hard to say, how that will impact the decision-making process of Mayor Sara. Simply because, number one, we're now speculating what's going to happen in September 8. We really have not reached September 8 yet, and we really don't know what's going to happen exactly. There are stories that have come out that the executive committee from the National Council or executive committee of
NEC.
PDP will endorse the Go Duterte tandem, no?
Yes, sir. Well, actually, they already have.
Yes, but the acceptance, sorry, I meant the acceptance
Yes, yes, that's true.
of the two personalities, no? On September 8th. So I guess we'll just have to wait until that happens, no? And then we'll have to see how Mayor Sara will react with regards to the acceptance.
Yes, sir.
On
Pero sir, kung
on
matuloy kasi
September.
kung matuloy yung publicly espoused plan nila, I mean, and that is their publicly espoused plan, kung matuloy yan, given everything we've talked about so far, that puts Mayor Sara in an awkward position.
Well, yes, it's possible that it could put her in an awkward position. But again, we just have to wait and see because we really don't know what Mayor Sara's thinking as of the moment. All we know is she's still thinking, deciding, and she said she will decide on October. Now, if Senator Bongo and President Duterte accept the nomination on September 8th, then we'll just have to wait and see how Mayor Sara will react to that. But it's very hard for me to speculate how she will react because I really do not know yet how she will react, to be honest.
Yeah. In the meantime, Mr. Del Rosario, I'll ask you about hugpong ng pagbabago.
But I will make dagdag lang po. But if you read her statement again a few days ago, it seems to me that kung yun talaga, di ba, nabanggit niya, kung yun talaga ang gusto nilang gawin, then they should proceed and explain to the people what they plan to do and so on and so forth. Di ba? I think that was very clear in Mayor Sara's statement. So, nasa kanila na po yun if they want to accept the nomination. No? Kami, we're not part of PDP. We have no relationship with PDP. So, we cannot tell them how they should respond to the nomination on September 8th. No?
Speaking of which, Mr. Del Rosario, I do mean to ask now, kamusta po ang hugpong ng pagbabago? People got to know it initially as a regional party. Has it grown? What is it now? And what's a better way, or what's the proper way to look at it now heading into 2022?
Well, nothing has changed. We're still a regional party. We're now concentrating on putting together our HNP candidates for the 5 provinces and of course Davao City for 2022. No? Yun lang po ang ginagawa namin. No? We have not really been talking about the national presidential elections next year. Again, simply because there's nothing to talk about because the chairperson of our party, Mayor Sara, has not yet decided what she plans to do. So in the meantime, while we're waiting for her to decide, we'll just do our own thing in our respective provinces. No?
Talaga po, ibig sabihin, in the meantime, hindi kayo nag-uusap-usap, yung chairperson natin, number 1 sa mga survey, yung chairperson natin, open naman siya. That option is on the table. She's acknowledged it. She is topping the surveys. If that's to be believed, and a lot of people put weight on those organizations that have put out the surveys.
Well, sir, we do have a group chat, no, in Viber, and pag may lumalabas sa survey, somebody will share it to the group, and we say, wow, okay, very good. So Mayor Sara's ahead. But what else can you do if the mayor has not yet decided?
Would you know kung ano po yung hinahanap niya sa kanyang magiging, kung sakasakaling tatakbo siya, kung anong hinahanap niyang qualities sa kanyang running mate, apart from the need to represent another part of the country?
Again, wala pa ho kami napapag-usapan. Wala pa ho kaming criteria on what the ideal vice president should be. No? Wala eh. We have not really talked about it. As a matter of fact, even yung binanggit ko na Luzon, mga galing ang vice president, that's just my own opinion. No? That was not something that we discussed with Mayor Sara. I'm just saying that it doesn't make political sense for Mayor Sara and Bongo to run together because they're from the same area. And it makes more political sense for her to run with somebody in an area that is, number 1, vote rich, and also in an area where she's not doing as well as the other areas.
Do you have an idea of ano yung kulang sa pinoprocess niya? I mean, what's holding her back?
There were times that we talked, and one of the things that's holding her back is the magnitude of the job, the complexities of the job, the problems that she would be facing if ever she wins as president. Number two po, napag-usapan din niya yung mga hindi pa niya natapos sa Davao City na gusto niyang tapusin sa third term niya. So far po, yun ang mga napag-usapan namin. But I'm sure there are other factors in her mind, but she has not shared that with me. Yun lang po ang na-share niya sa akin. No? And aside from that, it's very hard to pinpoint exactly what single factor or maybe two factors she's really concerned about because we really don't know. I'm just telling you what she has told me. And those are the two things that she has mentioned to me. What gusto niya tapusin yung mga naumpisahan niya kasi meron pa siya isang term sa Davao City. Number two, whether or not she wants to accept the challenges of being a president, the complexities of being a president, the intrigas of being a president, and so on and so forth. No, these are the things that she told me that she's concerned about. But I'm sure there are other factors also.
Okay. Sir, one last question. I mean, pasensya na po. I really want
Wala problema po.
to
Wala
get as
problema
much
po.
insights kasi matagal
Yes,
na
sir.
rin namin.
Yes, sir.
But kahit indirectly, just more insights. As you know, a lot of people, and some people will use it as criticism, some people will use it as a plus. But they will say, a Duterte is a Duterte. And so, habang maaga, I want to get into that. How is Sara Duterte manifestly a daughter of her father? And how is she, her own person, very much different from her father?
The similarities that I see between father and daughter is the conviction, the strength. Pareho matapang po, no? Mayor Sara is a tough person. She's very strict. Now, with regards to the differences, again, I think the most glaring to me is the process of decision making is totally different. Si Mayor Sara takes longer. Mas sigurista po siya. And once she makes a decision, hindi na po mag-iiba yun. Unlike her father, who makes decisions more quickly and at times nagre-reverse. No? I think we've seen that in the last 5 years of his presidency. I think that's the major difference between father and daughter.
What about values? I'll be very specific about it. Ang criticism
Yes,
kay
yes,
President Duterte is he has spoken out in contempt for democratic processes. He's told people don't mind the rules. I am the law essentially. What about human rights?
No. Si Mayor Sara is not like that po. Totally opposite po. Very different po. Si Sara, Mayor Sara, when we have meetings, it's very democratic. It's not authoritarian in style, no. It's whenever she has an idea, she throws the idea. Ano tingin niyo? So iba po, iba. With regards to that particular value, she's totally different from her father.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Anthony del Rosario, Secretary General of Hugpong ng Pagbabago. Sir, we look forward to seeing more of you, and hopefully Mayor Sara Duterte. We would love to have her also on the show. In the meantime, maraming salamat po.
Thank you din sa inyo. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Good day.
Please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back. Welcome back to the Chiefs here on One News. Now joining us is Professor Guido David and Father Nick Austriaco of the Octa Research Group. Good evening, Professor and Father.
Evening po.
Good
Good evening, sirs.
evening.
Hi.
The
Hi,
Father,
good evening.
Father, let me start with you. Well, numbers are up always. We wouldn't have you here if it weren't for that. I mean, you're always are invited here to discuss the numbers, of course. But I also wanted to start with, government is becoming much more explicit with this paradigm shift. No? Let's stop talking about ECQ. Let's stop talking about community quarantine. And in the past few days, they've been very explicit na granular lockdowns na pinag-uusapan natin ngayon. Granular lockdowns na. And that shifts really the conversation from IATF decisions to LGUs and so on. I'm just wondering, given the numbers that we've been seeing the past few days, does the timing make sense for this paradigm shift, or is this just as good a time as any to try something new?
Well, I mean, I just finished calculating the vaccination protection rates for the hospitals of the NCR. And it's clear that the vaccinations are protecting our people. So in terms of hospitalizations, let me just look at that data, which I just calculated for Octa about 15 minutes ago. So if you look at hospitalized COVID-19 patients, the vaccinations have decreased the risk by 2.125-fold. And for severe and critical COVID-19 patients, the vaccines in the NCR have decreased the risk 3.75-fold. What this means is that you're seeing significant protection. We're trying to identify the data from other countries, especially Singapore, Iceland, and the United States, that have varying levels of vaccination, to see how those numbers compare with other countries. Nonetheless, what you're beginning to see is that there is an effect of the vaccinations. And so if we are going to move away from hard lockdowns, this is the time that we would be able to consider it, because a month or so ago, we would not have had this kind of population immunity that we're beginning to see. And I know that based on the numbers that I received earlier today, the NCR should be fully, 50% of the adult population should be vaccinated by the end of about 2 weeks from now in the NCR. So as we increase the vaccination rate, we hope we will see decoupling more significantly. I'm trying to calculate that number. We do not have that data readily accessible in the Philippines to do these numbers. But if we are going to talk about moving away from hard lockdowns, the vaccinations are allowing us to even consider that. And I'm going to hand it over to Professor Guido David, because I have not looked at today's numbers yet. I just woke up here in the US. So he has a better sense of the immediate context for the pandemic in the NCR.
Well, Professor David, people are asking about the impact of the 2-week ECQ and now 1 week of MECQ, because the numbers are still very high. Today we had the second highest since the pandemic, daily cases. Can you expound on the impact? Because are we saying the impact of well, it's too small, and in Las Piñas and Antipolo and Manila, people were talking about a possible surge as a result of those super spreaders on the eve of ECQ. But is that an effect? Is that one of the reasons for this?
Well, that's a good point, Ami, and people are asking if the ECQ had an effect, and what we are seeing is, yes, it had an effect. The effect is that the reproduction number has decreased. It was as high as 1.9, and now the reproduction number in the NCR is around 1.45, I think. I think it's within that range. So there has been a significant decline in the reproduction number. We haven't seen it yet sa number of cases, kasi the reproduction number is still greater than 1. Once the reproduction number decreases close to 1, like 1.1, we will start seeing a decrease in cases. And even during past lockdowns, yung ECQ natin last March 28, and then the MECQ last August 4, hindi naman agad-agad bababa yung number of cases. So the number of cases will take some time, usually 3 to 4 weeks, before we see a decrease. So ibig sabihin, 3 to 4 weeks after the start of ECQ or after August 6. So right now, the projection is around first or second week of September when we will see the decrease in cases. This is not a guarantee. This is just based on the current projections because the reproduction number is decreasing naman. So it did have an effect on reducing the number of, at least reducing the reproduction number and maybe possibly on path to reducing the number of cases.
Pero Prof, nationally, we've been hitting new highs eh. Nung Monday, nag-18,000 new cases tayo and the positivity rates have hit new highs. I mean, sige, wag natin pansinin yung new cases, pero the positivity rate, mapalo ng 25 plus. My question, I understand Father's point of view, what Father was saying, that the vaccination gives us a chance and gives us an advantage in being able to move away from the lockdowns. But on the other hand, the question also is, would we be squandering by any chance away any advantage we have from the vaccinations by prematurely going into moving away from lockdowns? Would that make any sense?
Yeah, that actually makes sense, and that's actually a possibility that we could squander some of the gains that we made during the lockdown. And while I understand that vaccinations have been increasing, I think we're at about 30% fully vaccinated in the NCR and probably going to maybe 35% if what Father is saying is, if we're basing it on what Father Nick is saying. But at the same time, moving into granular lockdowns, if this is a strategy, my sense is that, if your cases are all over, a more centralized lockdown makes more sense. But if you have cases coming up in certain areas and localities, Mascalat, if concentrated in certain areas, then localized lockdowns will definitely be more appropriate for that kind. But we don't have the complete barangay data, but from what I remember, when Father Nick was looking at least LGU data, so far what we're seeing is that it's still spread all over. 99% of barangays of a certain LGU has new cases. That means it's not localized in certain barangays. So that at least for me goes against the logic of granular lockdown when it's all over, it's happening all over the place, and it's also happening not just in NCR, but we're seeing spikes in. I mean, of course, you could have maybe a lockdown of certain local governments in Bulacan where we're seeing spikes, and in Cavite where we're seeing spikes, and in Rizal where we're seeing spikes, or not just spikes, but actually increase in cases.
Father.
Well, one of the things, Ed, so you talk about the national numbers, but unlike the United States, I think one of the things that's really struck me is that there is no one national pandemic in the Philippines. The Philippines has really multiple local pandemics. The reason being that here in the United States, an American doesn't think twice about driving 15 hours for the weekend. We don't have Filipinos who with that incredible mobility moving from one region to the other. So I think it's important that when we speak about the pandemic, we need to speak about the pandemic in the NCR. And that is where the lockdowns really have had the impact. The concern, of course, is as Professor Guido David has pointed out to us as a team, there are other areas that are surging that have not been in ECQ. And so the concern there is that, you have to look at the different numbers. And the surging in the NCR has slowed down dramatically, which is why the reproduction number has decreased dramatically as well. But there are other areas of the Philippines where this is not the case, and so these large national numbers are really the aggregate of so many different pandemics working independently for the most part.
Father, does that also mean that we should, different LGUs, and for that matter, different regions, it should take the concept of granularity differently? Because here in NCR, yun yung message na parang wala nang ECQ na region-wide. You won't hear an NCR-wide lockdown anymore. And therefore, here we interpret it as it's up to the LGUs, it's up to the barangays. But does that mean that there are actually regions with less experience, and let's face it, less capacity as well than NCR, where region-wide lockdowns, I mean, worst comes to worst, region-wide lockdowns may still have to be on the table?
Well, two things I think to respond to that. I think that one of the things we struggle with in a large city like Manila is we cannot really control mobility in the way that if you have a ECQ in a smaller LGU, say Cagayan de Oro, or one of the smaller cities in one of our provinces, it is much easier for them to control the movement of 500 to 800,000 people than it is to control 14 million people. And one of the things that the DOH has argued is that the ECQs have become less and less effective over time because the people are simply not being restricted as much as they were in the past, for better or for worse. However, I think that if you do this, say, in Cagayan de Oro, it's going to be easier for you to limit that mobility in a way that makes it more effective. And you know, and people are always talking about the economic impact. And when you're trying to lock down 14 million people, the economic impact is going to be substantially greater than locking down an LGU with 500 or 800,000 people. And so in an LGU with 500 or 800,000 people, you can lock down an ECQ for 2 weeks quite effectively, I think. And I think we've seen that in the experience of some of our provincial LGUs. And so, yes, I think that for smaller locales, ECQ should still be considered in a way that for the NCR, it appears that we are moving away from.
Father, I'll just go back to the question of Ed, no? I mean, it will be the timing of shifting to the granular lockdown, because that's what our government is telling us, that we're going to move into that by September. But what you're in the US now, you're seeing what Delta is doing, well, mostly to the unvaccinated, but you have an increasing number of fully vaccinated people with breakthrough infections. You think we can afford it at this time? I mean, it's an evolving situation, right? And we don't have our shot. We don't have enough science to tell us whether we should get boosters or what we can do about Delta. You think we can do away with widespread lockdowns by September?
Well, I mean, the question actually is not simply moving from widespread lockdowns to granular lockdowns. Are we going to shift from MECQ to GCQ with granular lockdowns, or are we still going to stay in some form of MECQ with granular lockdowns? So I think, you know, it's not clear to me if the national government is saying we are now just going to abandon all quarantine classifications and just move to granular lockdowns, or what they have ruled out is just ECQ. So if they have ruled out ECQ and they're saying, well, we can be in MECQ with granular lockdowns, that's tolerable in my view. I mean, we've been that for the last week. We don't see a serious number of cases surging at the moment in the NCR. And secondly, one of the things, you know, is that in the United States, we are seeing that breakthrough infections, even when they go to the hospital, they only stay in the hospital for 3 or 4 days, as compared to the 20 days, 25 days for unvaccinated people. And since we're trying to protect the hospitals, you know, if we are able to increase the vaccination rate enough such that our kababayans who get sick, even those who go into the hospital, only stay in the hospital for a few days, what you're going to see is that will significantly decrease the burden on our health infrastructure, and it will alleviate significantly the pressure of the pandemic. And so we're not really decoupling yet, but we're beginning to see, well, based upon the work that we're seeing here in the US, we're beginning to see effects on even hospital duration of hospital occupancy. So I've actually reached out to the doctors on our team to ask whether or not in their experience, our kababayans who are vaccinated, is their confinement period significantly shorter than unvaccinated in the Philippines? We are seeing that in the States. I'm trying to see if we can see that already. But again, the data collection for this kind of information is quite sparse in the Philippines at the moment.
What about you, Professor David? Do you have any thoughts on this? Can we afford to move completely to granular lockdowns? Because they're saying the widespread lockdowns are so economically crippling.
Right. I kind of agree with Father Nick in the sense that if it's an MECQ with granular lockdowns, there should be no problem. But my impression is that what the recommendation is to move to a GCQ with granular lockdowns, and I think this could be something that could be discussed. But at this time, I think the cases are still significant, and it seems like I mean, for me, just my opinion, it might be a risky decision at this time. And I'm not saying, we don't do it at a future time. Maybe we could, we could wait 2 more weeks, at least for the cases to subside. If that's, what we are projecting to happen, at least when cases are subsiding, it will be easier because the momentum is now on a downward trend. But right now, even though the reproduction number is decreasing, the momentum is still going upward, and ICUs are still full in NCR. And if we, open up too early, we could see, it's possible we could see a resurgence of cases in ICUs, and we can't even open up ICUs in the provinces because they're already full in Pampanga, in Cavite. The ICUs are already at critical levels. So, people won't have hospitals to go to. So again, we're not against the granular lockdowns, but maybe we could just wait a little longer before we move into that, quarantine classification.
Before we go, kasi baka maubusan tayong oras eh. I'd like to ask Father about something very close to our hearts. I understand that next week there's going to be progress with regard to the yeast vaccine. You'll be injecting already the first test subjects.
So the mice arrived at UST in the middle of the lockdown, and they've been getting used to their housing for the last week. And then on Tuesday, they will receive the first dose. And now remember, this is not injected. We're going to put it down their mouth.
Oh,
it's
oral.
oral.
Okay.
So they will receive a dose Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Then we will wait 2 weeks. Then the second batch, 3 days in a row. We wait another 2 weeks, and we will be collecting their blood throughout the course of the experiment and looking to see what is happening to their immune system. So hopefully in a month and a half, we'll have the first data from our animal trials.
So ingested talaga, Bok. Talagang
Actually,
I'm
even
very
better.
happy to hear that.
So it's like a beer funnel. We have to
Yun.
put a tube down and squeeze
Imbudo, Ed. Imbudo.
down their throat.
Hindi, may tawag dun eh.
Imbudo.
Hindi, may tawag dun eh. Beer bong.
Beer pong, yeah.
Sorry.
Anyway, with the DOST on this, Father?
I'm sorry,
Are
Ami?
you working in any way with the Department of Science and Technology?
So I was just appointed a Balik scientist yesterday. I found out that, so now we will,
Congratulations.
we will work with the DOST. And the big thing now is I am sending all our supplies to the Philippines. And I've spent the last 5 days trying to work with the Bureau of Customs and trying to figure out how to import antibodies to the Philippines. So the DRST hopefully will be able to help us to facilitate the entry of these reagents to the UST that will allow my colleagues there to do the experiments that we have started.
Father, how do you import antibodies? That sounds alarming. Eh? I mean, to any customs agent, you're importing what?
So we have you can buy antibodies, and I have bought antibodies that will allow us to detect SARS-CoV-2. So what we are doing now is I'm trying to ship it by Federal Express International Priority to Manila, and we will package it here. My students will package it here, and we will send it by FedEx. But right now, I have to deal with all the paperwork that I've been told I have to fulfill in order to get this thing, because it will be under ice, it will be cold. So it cannot be sitting in a warehouse of the BOQ for more than a day. So we're trying to, before I send it off, I have to get all the paperwork done in order to facilitate the entry of these reagents to the Philippines.
Father, what does it mean to be a balik scientist? Because I saw Professor David clapping when you said you were appointed balik scientist. What does it mean?
So there is a Balik Scientist program of the Department of Science and Technology to encourage scientists abroad of Filipino descent to return and contribute to the science of our country. And so I was appointed that. So what I will do now is I mentor, I teach, I do all sorts of things to build the infrastructure of in my case, molecular biology at home. So that's what I will do. I will just go home. I'm trying to build up molecular biology in the Philippines.
Is there an incentive for the balik scientist program?
What happens is, so they will help me. I mean, they give me a stipend, but again, I have a vow of poverty, so that's not really an impact. But they will help in terms of, if I wanted to send supplies back, if they will pay for my airplane ticket to return home for Christmas, so I can teach during the second semester at UST, and it's just one more way for me to contribute to my homeland.
Oh, good news!
Congratulations, Father.
Congratulations, Father.
Thank you.
And
God is good.
And to Professor Guido David, as always, maraming salamat to you and to Octa
Thank you.
Research.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Robbie.
Father. Ingat po.
Stay
Thank
safe.
you, Amy.
That will be all for this special edition of The Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, stay safe, and get vaccinated, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Ed Lingao, and we are One News.